I was the only one without a gift under their perfect tree. But that came later. Before the quiet broke, there was my small house and the life I kept going because no one else would. My name is Marjorie Lane. I am 69 years old and still learning how to breathe again. I am a single mother who raised 2 children in Indiana when their father decided he liked leaving more than staying. I learned how to fix sinks, patch drywall, and hold my breath when the phone bill came. I learned how to keep moving when a room turned cold, just because I walked into it. Most mornings begin the same. I wake before sunrise in my Craftsman in Bloomington. I make my coffee the way I like it, strong, and sit by the window where the light paints a stripe across the kitchen floor. The radio murmurs the farm report. A cardinal taps the feeder. I do a crossword, pay bills, and tidy the table. There is comfort in order, especially when your heart remembers old storms. My children are grown now. Daniel has a booming voice and a talent for making sound easy. Clara learned early to smooth edges and keep score. The 2 of them drifted from me the way a boat drifts when the rope is cut. At first it was small, a missed Sunday, a canceled lunch. Then the calendar went quiet. I will not pretend I did not cry. I did. I cried in the laundry room with the dryer running so no one would hear me. Then I folded towels and kept going. There were good years, too. I do not erase them. Little hands on my cheeks when fevers broke. Brownies cooling on the counter. Last day of school. Photos on the porch. I counted what I could keep, and I kept it close. On a gray Tuesday in early December, the phone on my counter rang with a number I still knew by heart. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Hope is a tricky animal. It startles and bolts. I picked up anyway. "Hi, Mom," Clara said, too bright. "We are thinking of Christmas here in Columbus with everyone. You should come." The words sounded like they had been polished for a long time. I looked out at the elm branches against a pale sky and listened to the hum of the heater. It had been years since an invitation. I could feel that old ache marching up my ribs. One whispers, "You are easy to forget." Another voice rose, steadier, mine. "Not this time." I said I would think about it. After we hung up, I stood still, then opened the drawer where I keep the things I am not ready to name. I touched the envelope waiting there and felt the future lean forward. After the call ended, I stayed at the kitchen table, with my hand still resting on the receiver, as if it might ring again. But the silence settled back into the house, heavy and familiar. Silence has a memory. It carried me backward, through birthdays that came and went, through weddings where my name was left off the seating chart, through graduations I learned about from photos already posted online. Each time, I told myself maybe next year. Each time, the next year never came. Daniel used to call me Mama Joe when he was small. The first time he signed a text with just thanks instead of his old nickname, it felt like a thread snapping. Then came the short messages that only appeared when money was tight. "Can you help cover rent? Could you send a little for groceries?" I sent what I could, even when my pantry went bare for a week. I told myself that was what mothers did. Clara was different. She had her father's sharpness, the kind that could slice without anyone noticing until the sting came later. I still remember the Sunday. She looked across the table and said, "Mom, you make things uncomfortable. You worry too much. You should just relax." I nodded, trying not to show how the words lodged deep. After that, her invitations grew sparse, then stopped altogether. The sharpest memory was my 68th birthday. I did not expect balloons or a party. I did not even expect cake. I only hoped for a call, maybe a card in the mail. I checked the mailbox 3 times that day. Nothing. I checked my phone until the battery went red. Nothing. By dusk, I lit a single candle on a leftover muffin and sang to myself in a whisper. That was the night I realized I was no longer a chapter in their story. At best, I was a footnote. That hurt could have buried me. For a time, it nearly did. I sat by the window at night after night, staring at the street lamps while my tea went cold. I asked myself the question every forgotten mother asks, was I not enough? But in that tullo space, something unexpected stirred. It was not anger. It was not revenge. It was something steadier, a stubborn spark that whispered, "If they will not see you, see yourself. If they will not make room, build your own." I began to imagine a different kind of future, one where I did not wait for their approval to measure my worth. That was the seed. I did not know yet how it would grow, only that it had been planted. And as winter pressed against the windows, I decided I would not let the silence be the only thing filling my life. Something new had to begin. Would you like me to continue with part 3, The Secret Path, where Marjorie starts building her hidden business and life twist? I did not tell anyone what I was doing in those first quiet months. At night, when the neighborhood lights dimmed and the only sound was the ticking clock above the stove, I opened my second-hand laptop and typed words into a blank page. At first, it was just journaling, memories of raising children alone, tips on stretching a dollar, recipes that had kept us full when money was thin. I gave the little blog a name, Second Chapter Finds. It felt fitting. I was not starting over. I was turning a page. The writing led me to something unexpected. Women began leaving comments. Strangers from small towns in Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan. They said my words made them feel less invisible. One woman told me she had been widowed at 62 and had no one to talk to until she found my posts. Another said she clipped my advice about patching a leaky sink and taped it to her fridge. For the first time in years, I felt useful in a way that no one could erase. I taught myself how to take photos with good light, how to list items for sale, how to use a program that let me design simple logos. The blog grew into a marketplace. I started restoring vintage furniture, the kind other people left out by the curb. I cleaned, sanded, painted, and posted before and after pictures. People loved them. Orders trickled in. Then they doubled. Soon my garage was filled with rescued chairs and tables, waiting for new homes. With the money I earned, I bought my first small rental house on the edge of town. It was run down, paint peeling, roof sagging. Everyone said it was worthless. I saw possibility. I spent months learning repair basics, negotiating with contractors, and watching tutorial videos until my eyes blurred. When I finished, the place shone like it had been waiting for someone to believe in it again. A young family moved in, and their rent became my steady income. One property became 3. 3 became 7. I kept meticulous records, every dollar accounted for, every receipt tucked away. I reinvested my earnings, never bragged, never hinted. Daniel and Clara still thought of me as the mother who lived quietly on a pension, clipping coupons and filling her days with puzzles. That was fine. The less they knew, the freer I felt. 7 years passed like this. While they built their own lives without me, I built something of my own in silence. A company registered in my name. A portfolio of homes across southern Indiana. A blog followed by tens of thousands. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving in secret. And the day would come when the truth would not stay hidden any longer. Do you want me to move ahead with part 4, The Cold Welcome, where Marjorie arrives at Clara's home for Christmas and faces the dismissive atmosphere? The morning I left Bloomington, frost clung to the edges of my windshield like lace. I packed a single suitcase, a basket of carefully wrapped gifts, and the envelope I had guarded for years. The drive south to Columbus took nearly 6 hours. The highway stretched wide and empty, fields of corn stubble asleep under a pale sky. I kept the radio low and let my thoughts wander. I tried to picture laughter around a Christmas table, but memory kept pushing in darker images. Birthdays missed, messages unanswered, and that single candle on my muffin years ago. When I pulled into Clara's driveway, her house looked like it had been lifted from a magazine cover. White siding, black shutters, a polished wreath on the door. 2 shiny SUVs glimmered under the winter sun. I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, before forcing myself out into the chill. Clara opened the door almost at once. Her smile was polite, too practiced, the kind that stays only on the lips. "Mom," she said, drawing out the word. "You made it." She leaned in for a quick hug that barely brushed my coat, then waved me inside as if I were a visitor, not her mother. The warmth and scent of cinnamon hit me as I stepped into the foyer. The tree glowed in the corner, trimmed in gold and ivory, every ornament perfectly spaced, not a single handmade piece, no crooked star like Daniel once cut out of paper in 3rd grade. The place looked staged, too flawless to breathe. Daniel appeared a moment later, phone in hand, thumbs moving as though nothing else mattered. "Hey, Mom," he said with a distracted grin, one arm circling me loosely, before he dropped onto the couch. "Glad you could come." I murmured the same words back, though they rang hollow in the air. They led me upstairs to a guest room. The bedding smelled faintly of dust, the lamp flickered when I turned it on, and the dresser bore a fine layer of neglect. A sharp contrast to the polished perfection downstairs. I laid my clothes neatly in the corner, placed the basket of gifts beside the bed, and sat for a long moment on the sagging mattress. The silence pressed close. Dinner that night was elaborate. Roast duck with cherry glaze, wild rice with pomegranate seeds, dishes that looked more photographed than eaten. A long table glittered with crystal glasses and name cards. Mine was set at the farthest end, next to the serving cart. The conversation flowed around me, fast and loud. Investments, promotions, vacation plans. Clara and Daniel laughed together, their voices sharp with importance. At one point, Clara turned her eyes to me. "So, Mom, still keeping up with your little retirement hobbies?" The room chuckled lightly. Even Daniel smirked. I smiled faintly, lifted my teacup, and said, "Something like that." They turned back to themselves, not seeing the storm I carried quietly in my purse upstairs. Christmas morning began with the smell of cinnamon rolls and the shrill excitement of children running down the stairs. I rose early, made my bed, and slipped into a soft cardigan before stepping into the living room. The tree sparkled brighter than the night before, lights winking like jewels, and a mountain of gifts spilled across the floor in neat, color-coordinated wrapping. I found a place on the edge of the couch, quiet, waiting. "Okay, let's start," Clara called, clapping her hands as though she were directing a show. The children dove in, tearing paper, squealing over tablets and headphones. Wrapping flew through the air like confetti. Daniel opened a new set of golf clubs. Clara unwrapped a glittering necklace. They posed for pictures, their laughter echoing against the walls. I watched with a smile that did not reach my chest. My basket of small gifts, books, handmade scarves, a journal for Clara, sat unopened in the corner. I had thought carefully about each one, imagining their faces softening when they held something chosen with love. But no one noticed the basket. As the frenzy slowed, Clara glanced around the room, feigning surprise. "Wait," she said, scanning the floor. "Did we forget one?" She leaned toward Daniel, who shrugged and went back to fiddling with his watch. Then came the words, casual and cutting. "Oh, Mom doesn't need anything," Clara said lightly. "She has her puzzles and her little hobbies." The room chuckled. Daniel added, "Granny's used to it." Even one of the grandchildren echoed, "Yeah, Granny's fine." The laughter wasn't cruel in tone, but it landed like a blade all the same. I felt the sting in my chest, but my hands remained steady. I sipped my tea and set the cup down gently. My eyes moved over the piles of gifts, the glittering paper, the joy that had no place for me. And in that silence, something shifted. I reached into my purse, slow and deliberate. The room quieted, curious now. "Actually," I said, my voice calm, "I got myself something this year." I pulled out a thick envelope, plain white, no ribbon or bow. I placed it carefully on the coffee table. "What's that?" Daniel asked, half amused. "Something I thought I'd share with you all," I replied. I slid the papers free, stapled pages, numbers in neat rows, property deeds clipped to the back. The air changed. The children stopped rustling with their toys. Clara leaned forward, her brow furrowing. I looked at each of them in turn. "You may not know this," I said softly, "but while you were building your lives, I was building mine too." The laughter died entirely. In the silence that followed, I felt stronger than I had in years. I unfolded the papers and laid them flat on the table. The pages gleamed under the soft light of the Christmas tree, a strange contrast to the glittering ribbons scattered across the floor. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Daniel leaned forward, frowning at the numbers as if they were written in a foreign language. "This is income?" he asked slowly. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, each word measured. "From second chapter Finds, the little blog you once called a diary. It is now a marketplace with over 60,000 monthly readers. Women from all across the country visit every week." Clara blinked. "Wait, you? You built this?" "I did, did," I answered. I slid another sheet toward Ted. "And here, these are the deeds. 7 rental homes across southern Indiana. Every one restored with my own hands and with the help of people who believed in me. They bring in steady rent each month." The silence stretched. Even the children had gone still, their gadgets forgotten. I could hear the fire crackle behind me, the only sound in the room. Daniel picked up one sheet and let out a nervous laugh. "This says you cleared over $52,000 last quarter alone. Mom, this has to be a mistake." "No mistake," I said calmly. "Sometimes more." Clara's face drained of color. She pressed a hand to her lips, as though the words might spill out without permission. "And you never told us." "You never asked," I replied. The words slid out sharp but true. I reached again into the envelope and drew out a small velvet pouch. From it, I pulled a gleaming silver key. I held it high so they all could see. "This," I said, "belongs to my new loft apartment in downtown Indianapolis. 2 bedrooms, high ceilings, sunlight pouring in every morning. I signed the papers last week, paid in full." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You bought an apartment? Alone?" I nodded. "Alone, happily." Then I let the twist fall, slow and deliberate. "And there is more. The office where Clara's company rents space? The old brick building on Washington Street." Clara's eyes widened. "What about it?" "I bought it last spring." I placed another deed on the pile. "Your rent checks arrive in my account every month." The room was silent, the kind of silence that presses against the skin, heavy and undeniable. I sat back, folded my hands neatly, and looked at each of them. For years they had seen me as a woman fading into the background, a figure with nothing left to give. Now they were staring at the truth they never imagined, and for the first time in a long time, I did not feel invisible. I felt seen. Daniel broke the silence first. He laughed, though it sounded hollow. "Well, Mom, this is impressive, but think what you could do with some real help. Clara and I know people, investors, marketers. We could take your little project global." Clara straightened, her voice warm but edged. "Yes, we could merge your blog into our firm, a family brand. Imagine the reach, the sponsorships. You'd never have to worry about money again." I listened, sipping my tea. Their words rushed out now, polished like sales pitches. Not once did they ask how I had managed alone. Not once did they say they were proud. All I heard was the hunger in their voices, the sudden recognition that I had become useful again. I set the cup down carefully. "No," I said. The word was soft, but it cut through the air. Clara blinked. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not interested in partnerships. Not with either of you." Daniel frowned. "We're just trying to help." I leaned forward, folding my hands. Help? Where was that help when birthdays passed without a call? When I sat alone on holidays? When my name was left off invitations? For years I knocked on doors that stayed closed, so I stopped knocking. And in the silence, I built something of my own. Not for your approval. For my survival. Daniel dropped his eyes to the floor. Clara's mouth opened, but I kept going. "You see numbers, you see profit, but what I built came from nights you never asked about, from pain you never cared to notice, and I will not hand it over to people who only look my way when there's money on the table." The room was heavy with my words. Clara's face stiffened, her hands clutching her necklace. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, lost for words. I stood, walked to the corner, and lifted a small gift bag. From it, I pulled an envelope and handed it to my granddaughter Emma, who had been silent all morning, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is for you," I said gently. She opened it and gasped. Inside was a certificate, a scholarship bond in her name. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and turned back to the others. "That is the only partnership I care about. The future of those who see me, not those who forget me." I gathered my coat from the chair. "I'll be leaving tonight." No one moved to stop me. The silence followed me down the hall, out the door, into the cold December air. I carried my suitcase to the car, slid behind the wheel, and started the engine. For the first time in years, I felt light. I was leaving not in anger, but in freedom. The drive back to Bloomington was quiet, the highway stretching before me like a ribbon of possibility. I did not look back at Clara's glowing house. I let the Christmas lights fade in the rearview mirror until only the steady hum of the road remained. Messages buzzed on my phone. Daniel, Clara, even a hesitant one from Emma. I did not open them. Instead, I turned on the jazz station and let the music carry me home. When I arrived, the house greeted me with its familiar creaks and warmth. I hung up my coat, brewed chamomile tea, and lit a small candle on the kitchen table. Then I opened my laptop and scrolled to the draft I had prepared days earlier. Its title was simple: "The Gift I Gave Myself." I added the final lines and pressed publish. Within minutes, comments began pouring in. Women wrote from small towns and cities alike. One said, "I spent Christmas alone too, but your words reminded me I still matter." Another confessed she had given up on her art until reading my post. The screen filled with gratitude, one message after another. I answered each, not as a businesswoman, but as a fellow traveler who knew the ache of being unseen. Weeks passed, and the story spread further than I expected. It was quoted in newsletters, shared in online groups, even mentioned on a local radio show. Then an email arrived from the host of a podcast called New Horizons. They featured people who reinvented themselves after 50. She asked if I would share my journey. I said yes. We spoke for nearly an hour, her questions gentle but sharp. What did it feel like to be forgotten? How did I find the courage to begin again? What advice would I give to other women standing at the edge of loneliness? My answer was simple: you do not need permission to start. You only need space and a little stubbornness. The episode reached thousands. My inbox overflowed with letters, not of praise, but of kinship. Women sent stories of losses, of small victories, of long nights. They told me they felt less alone. And in their words, I found a purpose larger than myself. In the spring, Emma came to stay for a week. She carried a notebook and questions scribbled on every page. We worked side by side at my kitchen table, building her first digital journal. Her laughter filled the house in a way I thought I had lost forever. On a golden April morning, I opened my planner and wrote, Q2 goals, launch mentorship circle, finish spring collection plan retreat. I paused, smiling. They once counted me out. Now women everywhere counted me in. And the lesson was clear. When love comes with conditions, give yourself the gift of unconditional worth. Loneliness can break you, or it can build you. I chose to build, and that choice became my legacy.